edition of FF Champs After Dark every Friday night at 10 p.m. We are a member of the Full-Time Podcast Network. We are continuing to grow strong, and we are getting stronger each and every day. Of course, I want to bring on my co-host for the evening, Mr. Andy Singleton. Andy, how you doing tonight?
Jim, I'm good. You asked if this was a Santa hat. It's actually a headband, as you mentioned. I saw Jim McMahon last night on Thursday Night Football, and it just fired me up, and it made me think back to sometimes I've talked with Elliot Christ, and he's had a headband on supporting Baker Mayfield. So I just figured, it's week one. Let's get a little crazy with this. Friday night, FF Champs After Dark. Why not?
And I see you got the Scott Fishbowl shirt on. Good for you. Supporting the great cause, always good thing.
This was 7. Which I don't even think I made the playoffs, but 8. I finished 4th overall.
Well, there you go. Good for you. For some reason, that contest has kicked my ass every year. But we are joined tonight by special guest, Mr. Etan Mozia, joining us from the Dynasty Diagnostic Pod and all over Twitter. He's there every day. He's into so many different conversations. You should definitely be following him at Etan Mozia. Etan, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Jim. Andy, I'm just so happy to be here. Man, it's the start of the NFL season. It's Christmas. It's better than Christmas, honestly, to me at this point. So I'm just raring to go and ready for the season and want to get into what we're going on to talk about today.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover today. And, of course, it's it wouldn't be right if we didn't start with the man who is becoming the biggest drama queen in football, and that has to be Mr. Antonio Brown. Yesterday he was going to be suspended, maybe out of the league, maybe never play it down in football again. Now he's going to start on Monday. So, Etan, I got to get your take on Antonio Brown and all the stuff that is happening right now.
I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Antonio Brown, he could be a mad genius, or he could just very well be mad himself. I was kind of the opinion that his antics moving from Pittsburgh to Oakland kind of made a little bit of sense if you saw him from his perspective. He didn't have a lot of guaranteed money left in Pittsburgh. He obviously was unhappy with that. Pittsburgh had already just kind of displayed a little bit of their unhappiness with him, so it kind of made sense that he wanted to cause a ruckus to lower his trade value and get that move that he wanted, and eventually it did work out for him. He got a lot more guaranteed money out in Oakland, about $30 million. He is going to be the number one target in Oakland. There's no Juju Smith-Schuster to have to deal with, so I mean, it seems to have made just a little bit more sense, but when you see all these other things happening, the cryo treatment, the helmet grievance, I don't necessarily know what is going on with Antonio Brown. And this is a receiver who, honestly, as great as he is and as great as he has been, is on the back nine of his career. Antonio Brown last season had the lowest pacer rating or the lowest racer rating of his career at 0.69. He had some of the lowest ADOT that we've seen in the past 5 seasons. Antonio Brown is a different wide receiver. A lot of his production last season was due directly to the touchdowns he scored. I just don't see how this offense that he's in now is as good as the offense that he was in Pittsburgh. So if those touchdowns come back just a little bit, then we can see a real regression from Antonio Brown. And that's assuming that he plays 16 games, even though it seems to me like, 10 years, $100 million man, John Gruden is definitely calling shots out in Oakland.
Oh, good call. I agree. And Andy, watch out. We got a stats guy with us. He loves some stats. Andy, what's your take here?
I mean, he said a mouthful, so there's not really much more I have to dispute with that. I've been maintaining it since we've been started on this show that I think Antonio Brown's going to have the last laugh. I think he's having a fun time with all this. I don't believe any of it until we see him miss actual games. He was ready to go in the preseason, seemed to be very kumbaya with Derek Carr and with Gruden and everything like that. Then you hear he's fighting with Mayock, and Mayock's bigger than Brown, I would think. Brown's probably a lot quicker, but I've met Mike Mayock. He's
the tale of the tape from Andy.
He's a pretty big dude. It is what it is. I had him. I'm going back to look at my draft rankings. I had him ranked number 20 overall at wide receiver. And I think some of that just has to do with just a little bit of fear that maybe there is a game or two missed here or there, whether it be for personal reasons, health reasons, who knows, whatever. I don't think there's anything wrong with him physically. As Etan said, maybe a little mad, but no, I think he's going to have the last laugh. I think he's good to go. I'm not really worried about him. I think he's a huge value wherever you can get him now. It's drama. He's taken the baton from T.O. and Ocho, and it's now with AB. So he's your diva wide receiver.
Yeah, but see, there's a lot of reports coming out now that he never called Mike Mayock cracker or any of that stuff that got reported early on. And, it reminds me a lot of what happened with T.O. because, look, I'm in the firm belief that T.O. got so much more garbage than he really deserved. He was a hard worker. Team loved him. All the other crap that came along with it was almost always media generated. And, it's like, right now, I think Brown, it's not all coming from the media, but every second that anything, even comes close to happening, the media jumps right on it and, really just has to make it the biggest thing ever. So it is what it is. The only one on the planet right now that's probably laughing his ass off on this is Tomlin in Pittsburgh. He's probably sitting in his office saying, I'm so glad he's gone. But he's probably the only man on the planet who's doing that. So we'll see. A lot of people say, hey, look, it could absolutely be CTE, especially after that Vontaze perfect hit that he took, and it very well might be. But you have to think that by now they would have had, some CT scans done on him to see if that was in fact the case. But, it is what it is. Just craziness going on over there. And just crazy. So we had one actual football game last night, or did we? Was that an actual football game?
It was a preseason game.
Andy, what was your thoughts on the first game of the week? Chicago against Green Bay. 10-3. What is this? 1953?
I think the over was 46, I believe it was. And I foolishly took that thinking, yeah, this is, Aaron Rodgers, national spotlight. We've always seen him shine, and he did what he had to do. He did enough. I mean, he didn't completely shit the bed for fantasy owners. I know a lot of people would speculate that some other players. My biggest issue was, where did all the Trubisky love go that I saw on my timeline all summer? Oh, this is the breakout. This is the breakout. This is Nagy. This is a second year with Trubisky now, and he's going to do it. And I didn't buy into it. The big takeaways I had from last night were, I'm scared of Tariq Cohen now. This Mike Davis thing is real. Tariq Cohen doesn't really have a place. He's a glorified return specialist at this point who will get an occasional play called for him. But, as a running back, no. Is he going to take the slot? I don't think so. There's just too many options there, too many similar types of options to him as well. So I think there's just something that makes me worry about him. But Allen Robinson is back as a wide receiver one, at least, after 1 week. So the volume's there for him, whether or not the touchdowns are. So that was something to take away as a positive. The last thing I'll say about last night's game is Aaron Jones, owners, relax, take a deep breath, be patient. If you read my man JCW Helmkamp's piece, his rush rating system out on Expand the Box Score, if you saw that, he said Aaron Jones is going to have a crap week one and then buy him low, whoever's, panicking. So just relax for a little bit with Aaron Jones.
Etan, what was your take from last night's game? Anything you took away from it that could be useful for fantasy owners?
Yeah, a few things. I mean, number one, Mitchell Trubisky, Blake Bortles, they're the same person. They've been the same person the vast majority of.
Oh wait, come on, tell him the name. I love the name. Give it out there.
It's Mitch Trubisky. It's been Mitch Trubisky forever, and it will remain Mitch Trubisky forever. And I think the question that really becomes, for Mitchell Trubisky, for Josh Allen, for all of these mobile yet very, very inaccurate quarterbacks, I don't think that there's a danger that any of them lose their jobs before their rookie contract is up, because that is such an advantage in the modern NFL. That's how these teams win those Super Bowls, by putting a lot of high-priced talent around cheap rookie quarterbacks. So that makes sense. But as soon as that fifth-year option is up, I have real concerns about whether these guys maintain their roles as starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Mitchell Trubisky was missing things left and right yesterday's game. He had a couple of nice passes that some people kind of came back at me with, but I mean, he also had about 4 interceptions that were dropped, just completely dropped by Green Bay defenders. This is just what we've seen from Mitch Trubisky, and knowing that as a coach, Matt Nagy needs to recognize that he needs to find other ways to get other people involved, to get the ball out of Mitchell Trubisky's hands in a way to operate that offense without putting so much pressure on Mitchell Trubisky, or else we're going to see this a lot over and over and over again. Even in a lot of the good contests that we saw from a guy like Mitchell Trubisky last season, most of those were, and this is actually a stat that I pulled from Mike Florio from NFL Fantasy, most of those were in games where he scored at least 4 fantasy points rushing. He had a lot of rushing yards, and obviously that helped with his performances last season. But when you actually look him as a passer, it's just not good, and it has never even been good in the games that we have seen good fantasy performances from Mitchell Trubisky. But it's not all about Trubisky. Trey Burton was out. A lot of what you said about Tariq Cohen, I share that same sentiment, Andy. I really do think that Tariq Cohen and Anthony Miller may kind of be splitting a position in that Chicago offense for now, and that's not good news for either of them. I really do think that Allen Robinson being able to put up 7 catches for 100 yards plus in this game that was a just god-awful game where nothing went well bodes well for his future. The split between Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, I think, is definitely something to watch, understanding and noting that Matt LaFleur kind of had the same situation last year where he had 2 running backs. He couldn't necessarily figure out which one was better and ended up not necessarily getting the best out of both of them. There's a lot to unwrap with this game that we saw yesterday. Obviously, with the way the preseason is, with the lack of practice time a lot of these veterans get, I don't think you can take away too much from this game in terms of usage, in terms of snap counts, in terms of how good that the players were this particular game. The offensive line seemed to have taken the entire first half just off completely. But I really do think that, I mean, this is largely what we kind of can expect from Chicago. This is not an offense that was bringing anything down last season. This was a team that was lucky more often than not, that found themselves in positive game scripts, that did not put pressure on Trubisky. In a game where they're down, even in a game where they were only down by 1 touchdown yesterday, they still allowed Mitchell Trubisky to throw 44 times. Having David Montgomery in the backfield, having Tariq Cohen 45 times, having Tariq Cohen in the backfield, having Mike Davis, who was decent yesterday in the backfield, they still put the onus on him to go out and win the game. I just don't think that that is a recipe for success this season. And for that reason, the takeaway from me is I'm more worried about the Chicago Bears than I am about the Green Bay Packers. Not to say that they looked great yesterday anyway.
No, but and just, Jim, sorry, real quick, just to take this. I think this is the manifestation of us being spoiled with football and how much has been aired out the last couple of years in fantasy and how much everybody's desperate and looking for points, where you feel like you see this pretty good defensive game between 2 stellar defenses. And that was the theme of the night from on field, was the Green Bay team saying, we have a defense. And you saw it. They definitely have a defense. This is the type of games that both of these teams figure to be in. I think Chicago has a good enough offense to beat up on some of the inferior opponents. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has proven what he can be, so I'm not worried about them going forward. They have just enough to eke it out against somebody like Chicago. But this was a defensive battle, and there was nothing wrong with that. I think it was more the defense as being good than the offense as being really bad last night. So I don't want to get too carried away with it. But, sometimes we can appreciate a matchup such as this. I mean, this was old school grinded out football.
No, we can't. No,
you can. Yeah,
no,
you can.
we can't. Screw
If
that.
this was the Sunday night game,
65-62 every freaking game.
Go watch.
I hate those defensive
college.
freaking battles. They suck.
Go watch. If this were the Sunday night game and not the Thursday night opener, we wouldn't be having the same conversation.
Yes, we would. It was a terrible game. I hated it. Look, I'm going to put this one solely on Nagy's shoulders. To me, this was all on him. He tried to get too cute with the running backs, get everybody involved, keep switching them in and out. Nobody could get into any kind of rhythm, which I hate for running backs. Running backs need to get into a rhythm. He did not allow a single one to get in any kind of rhythm. Heck, they run 14 times, 15 times in the game? Meanwhile, they got Trubisky throwing 45 times. This is all on the coach of the year from 2018. This was his loss. He definitely brought this team down by lousy play calling. And sure, Green Bay's defense looked better than people expected, better than I expected. They looked good, no doubt about it. But this was just bad coaching by Nagy. This was all on him as far as I'm concerned. They get Mike Davis to start and all that, and then they finally get Montgomery on the field. And hey, look, I've been touting Montgomery all preseason. I've gotten so much crap already today from that, but I don't care about that. It's 1 week. I'll live with it. But the fact of the matter is, it seemed like when they brought Montgomery in, he actually gave them a little push. It seemed like the offense, while it wasn't great yardage, they got a first down. They were moving a little bit, and then they take him right back out of the game, and the offense dies again. Davis played well, but it wasn't like he forced any missed tackles. Meanwhile, Montgomery forced 4 missed tackles. I think they're both going to be involved, but man, at some point I have to think Montgomery takes over this backfield because he is the best running back on that team. So yeah, I have to believe that. But to me, this was all on Matt Nagy and just terrible play calling, just outright terrible.
So what were your thoughts on Cohen, and where do you see him going forward in this offense?
Look, I think Cohen is going to be used a lot in the slot going forward, no matter what happens, whether Burton comes back or not, because let's face it, he is their next best receiver. Anthony Miller hasn't shown that he's that guy yet. They don't have anybody else on the roster that really is. So basically, he knows that he's their, he's the second best receiver on that team. So why not keep doing it? It worked well for them last night. I don't really see them getting away from that all that much. It might happen with Miller. They want to get Miller more involved, but I mean, Miller ran 11 plays, 11 routes last night. That's not getting it done.
I do think that was a reflection on Miller's health, though.
And Miller, it very well could be. I'm not going to argue that. It very well could be. He wasn't 100%, and that may come into it as well. But I just think Cohen is a better receiver at this point in their careers than Miller is.
That definitely could be true. One of the things that it seems like every offseason that a lot of fantasy gamers seem to not quite understand or maybe just deny is we underestimate veteran deference in the NFL and what the veteran means to that offense, what the coaches want that veteran to do every single year. We think this new rookie is going to come in and automatically just take all the workload. And like Andy was saying, and of course, like you were saying as well, Jim, I do think David Montgomery sees more work over time, but we have the same conversation every season. We're really, really hyped about the rookie, and then it turns out that the rookie is not getting that full workload off the bat, and then everybody freaks out, and then everything kind of rights itself by week 8, week 9. So I think we can kind of see the same thing here, but expecting so much out of David Montgomery, expecting so much out of Miles Sanders, I think is a little bit misguided right now. Even Josh Jacobs,
just
I
early
would
in the
be
season.
concerned about.
Right,
early
just early in the
yes.
season. And I agree with that. And I'm not usually one that pumps the rookies. I'm really not. I just think Montgomery is literally the best running back on that team. I like Mike Davis. I think he did well in Seattle last year. And I think he's a good, backup guy that you have. But, man, I love Montgomery coming out of college. I just loved his college work, what he did, what he, was possible that he did every stinking game. And then, to land in Chicago after they just got rid of Jordan Howard, I thought was perfect for him. And I still believe that. So I don't doubt Montgomery coming out on top of this, but it might be more of a split than I initially thought. And the whole thing of them getting Cordarrelle Patterson involved too, that get him out of there. Look, I'm not saying he can't do the job, but again, it comes down to trying to get some kind of flow going for a running back. And you can't do that by constantly changing them in and out. Who does he think he is? Bill Belichick?
Yeah, it's TCS. It's too cute syndrome, definitely.
Yeah, really. It's just, I was sitting there watching the game. I'm like, what are you doing? How do you let Trubisky throw 45 times when you're only running 15 and you are only down by 4 points for most of the game? What is that all about? Okay, enough overreaction. I'm not really worried about these guys. I like them coming in. I'm going to like them past this one game. And the one thing that we always seem to forget coming into week one is that the defenses always seem to be ahead of the offenses when you get into that first week. So, folks, get used to it because we're going to have a lot of these same conversations on Monday after the Sunday games. And we're saying, oh, my God, what did they do? How come they look so bad? We're going to be talking about that a lot. Mark my words. Okay, so let's get into some fun time. Let's talk some sleepers and busts. I love sleepers and busts. So I'm going to start with you, Etan. Give us a sleeper for the week.
A sleeper for the week. My sleeper for the week and my sleeper kind of for the season is Deebo Samuel. I really do think that, this is a guy who's as talented as everyone starting at receiver in San Francisco. I think he is as talented as Dante Pettis. A lot of some of the good words coming out from camp, at least when Dante Pettis was drafted, was that he was a good returner. Deebo Samuel offers that as well. He is... they both kind of have a little bit of an injury history to them, but they don't necessarily.
I like how you say little.
Exactly. But they don't necessarily beat each other so much in terms of what they were able to produce on the field when they were given opportunities. And I really do think that Marquise Goodwin is not long for being the wide receiver one out in San Francisco. Now, I don't know what the actual value of being a wide receiver one in San Francisco is, considering that George Kittle is the number one target out in San Francisco. But I think against a defense that's not going to be able to challenge you, that we're going to be seeing a lot from Deebo Samuel this year. So he would be probably my sleeper, my deepest sleeper anyway, of the week.
Well, there you go. That's pretty deep. More likely not starting. So that's definitely going deep behind Goodwin and Pettis. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm definitely a Dante Pettis believer. I loved what I saw out of him last year. I think the kid is the real deal. But for some reason, he might be one of those guys that just plays better on the field than practices. And coaches don't like those guys. If you're going to play good on the field, get in here and practice for real. And believe me, I've seen too many guys on the field when I was on the field that did that and would really get looked on badly. So it's not a good thing. Andy, give us a sleeper for week one.
Yeah, I didn't know how deep you wanted to get. So when you went with Deebo Samuel, I'm not going to give you a sleeper. I'm going to give you a whole team. And I'm going to say ever since the...
Andy never follows the directions.
Well, I'm going to give you a whole team because I'm going to say ever since the Laramie Tunsil trade, it seems like everybody's just said, I want no part of Miami, which, okay, rightfully so. It sounds pretty bleak, but they're going to put up points. They're going to be at home from a fantasy aspect. They're going to be in the game. I like Ryan Fitzpatrick being the starter here over Josh Rosen, at least in this week. I think the mobility helps him. He's an active, nose to the ground kind of player. I think there's value in some of these Miami players this week. I don't think there's going to be goose egg. I think don't be too afraid of it. I see Gregory Castillo saying James Washington. That would have been my other guy, but I feel like been there, done that. I'm tired of telling Jim how good James Washington is.
So good he can't touch the field in a real game. He's great.
I'll give you the
Meanwhile,
whole
he's
Miami
stuck behind Juju anyway. They play the same damn position, and he's only getting on the field if Juju goes down. So people keep banging the James Washington drum. You keep doing it. You keep doing it. I'm glad to hear it because it's just wrong.
True.
It's just wrong.
You can talk about a receiver in Miami who's better than James Washington.
Ooh, I want to hear that. Who you got? I'm going to go with Preston Williams.
See, that's not necessarily where I'm at with it. His name is Albert Wilson.
Oh, I like Albert Wilson.
Albert Wilson is, per touch, one of the most explosive receivers in the NFL. We've seen that born over the last couple of seasons. Albert Wilson now doesn't have to deal with Kenny Stills. The two might have been operating kind of in the same space on the field, although Albert Wilson is more of a slot receiver. Kenny Stills is more of a versatile receiver that can do both. So the departure...
That's not fair.
the departure of Kenny Stills, I think, for Albert Wilson, for a team that's going to be down most often, can really mean big things for him and for the rest of the Miami receivers, especially if Ryan Fitzpatrick is the guy at quarterback. He has had a good history targeting the slot receiver. I really do think that Albert Wilson can be that guy for Miami this year, and that we can see big things if we can see a healthy season from Albert Wilson, from a team that is going to have to call back every game.
That's the rub right there. The man can't stay on the field. I love the man as a receiver, but he can't stay on the field, and he's not even 100% now. So I wouldn't play him in week 1 if anybody's listening. He's not 100% now, so I wouldn't count on him this week. I do love the guy on the field. He's one of those guys I wish could stay healthy for 16 games. I'd love to see what we could get out of him numbers-wise, but, man, he just can't do it, and that bothers me. So I'm going to jump in here with my sleeper, and just because nobody's talking about him, look, the man's coming off a serious injury last December. He's had a great preseason. He looks fully healthy. He's ready to go, and still nobody believes in him. I'm going with Emmanuel Sanders. I love Emmanuel Sanders this week. He's got a great matchup against Oakland. He's probably going to be matched up against LaMarcus Joyner almost a ton in this game, and I love that matchup. He's going to be able to run circles around Joyner. Joyner allowed almost 70% of his targets to be caught last year. So Emmanuel Sanders is going to eat this week. If you have him on your bench, put him in your starting lineup. This man is going to eat. I don't care about Cortland Sutton. I don't care about Deshaun Hamilton, Tim Patrick, any of those guys, none of the tight ends. Emmanuel Sanders is going to get it done. Make sure he is starting for you.
I thought you were going
on Sanders? Go ahead.
I thought you were going with his old teammate Demaryius Thomas when you were.
Oh no, I'm not. I don't think look. Demaryius Thomas had a nice game in the last preseason game, no doubt about it. But if you actually watch the game, to me, a couple of times it looked like he came up at the end and he was like reaching for his leg. And anytime you see a receiver doing that, especially one coming off an injury, to me, I'm not really liking that. I think they think he'll be ready soon, but I don't know if I'd bet on him in week 1. Etan, any thoughts on my sleeper?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually a Denver Broncos fan, so I want to be very, very positive about this Denver Broncos team. I want to get there. I can't because Joe Flacco is just
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco doesn't even describe it. Like it should. Honestly, there should be a Joe Flacco word in the dictionary that stands for poor quarterback. But I mean, over his entire career, Joe Flacco has never actually had a completion percentage over expected, meaning what the play design was, how the receivers were open, all the rest of this. Joe Flacco has never even reached the numbers that he was supposed to in the system that he's been operating in. And now he comes to a Denver team that outside of Emmanuel Sanders just doesn't have any type of experience around him. Now, I like Emmanuel Sanders as well in a vacuum. And considering what he did with Case Keenum last year, I can definitely see the interest around him. But a guy coming off of an Achilles injury as quickly as he came off of an Achilles injury kind of scares the hell out of me when it comes to Emmanuel Sanders. This is just not something that we've seen before.
Saying. I'm telling you, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Jump in with both feet. Come join me, Etan. Come join me.
It's unprecedented. And for that reason, I guess I'm a little bit out. But if there's going to be a guy to be a valuable receiver out in Denver, then yes, Emmanuel Sanders is that guy this season.
It's halfway there. Okay. Next week, I'll get you all the way there. Andy, give us a bust for the week.
Yeah, I'm going to say Nick Chubb will be my bust for this week. And that is...
Ooh, that's ballsy. I like it. Go on. Tell us why.
Well, you look at Tennessee and what they did against the run last year. They were stout. They gave up fourth fewest touchdowns, fifth fewest yards per game. I think they're fired up. I think the Browns have made themselves. It's kind of a rare situation to see a team that didn't make the playoffs kind of get the Super Bowl treatment, where I think they have a target on their back. They've made themselves the talk of the league. They've made themselves like people. Everybody's getting their best. So not only do you have opening week, you got the Titans going to be fired up about that. You have you're playing Cleveland, and they were solid against the run. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Chubb just out of the gate. Let's go. Let's get this going. fire him up for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns maybe. I don't think that's going to be the case this week. So I would say that will be my surprise bust for week 1.
Ooh, there you go. That's ballsy.
I think
it.
it's going to be
like
an ugly kind of game. I don't think it's going to be a high potent, shootout. I think it's going to be a lot closer to what we just saw last night than something different.
Ooh, any thoughts on that one, Etan?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually tend to kind of agree. I think that I'm right there with you for that one. My bust would be a guy that we're probably going to talk about a little bit later on in this program, but a guy that a lot of people have a lot of excitement about this season. And in game 1, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is going to be my bust because I think that this Arizona offensive line it's not good. All right. It wasn't good last year. They're returning 3 starters. One of those starters is hurt already before this game starts. Snacks Harrison is not going to allow rushing to be a factor in this game coming up. The Detroit Lions have the personnel on defense, at least on that defensive line, to ring Kyler Murray's bell over and over again. We're throwing a rookie into the fire here. It looks like they're not necessarily happy with most of the receivers that they've had on this team so much that they had to get Crabtree to be an additional target for Kyler Murray. If Keyshawn Johnson is going to be Kyler Murray's number 1 passing threat, then I really do just think that this is going to be a tough game to kind of survive in. Now, a lot of people are pegging this for a shootout. I don't necessarily see it that way. I see both offenses that are going to have trouble scoring. Everything that we saw in this Chicago Bears Green Bay Packers game in terms of the offense is starting slow and the defense is kind of running the ship, I think could happen at least against Arizona this game. Now, on defense, Arizona doesn't have the personnel to stand up to anybody. So that could definitely provide a game script that at least allows Kyler Murray to have attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt. But I just don't think he's going to have the time to make any of these things to make this worthwhile starting week 1 with all the excitement that is surrounding him.
Well, I got to jump in here because, I'm interested to see what this offense could do. But you're right. This week 1 is just tough because, look, as you said, their offensive line was bad before, but now the fact that they're going to miss, what the hell's his name? Marcus Gilbert, the right tackle, is being out for injury as well. Absolutely not going to help because they don't have anybody with any real experience that they can just jump in there. So this is going to be a strange game for them. And the one thing I've been saying about Kyler Murray all year is that while he can run, he doesn't like to run. He'll move around a lot, both sides of the pocket because he can throw very well on the run. Well, that's what he's going to have to do this week because they're going to be chasing his ass everywhere. It's kind of nuts. It's going to be interesting. Andy, go ahead.
I disagree with the way you phrased that. I agree. He does not like to run, but he loves to run. He loves to use his legs. He doesn't like to run. He doesn't like to go past the line of scrimmage.
Well, that's what I said. Pretty sure that's exactly what I said.
No, you said he doesn't like to run. So I said I had a problem with the way
I meant he doesn't like to pull the ball down and try and run upfield. He moves around a lot behind the line of scrimmage, which is what I said. And then he throws great while he's on the run, which is what I said. I agree with that. He's going to be running for his life this week. So I like that one. I'm going to go a little bit higher here for my bust of the week. And just because I have to, I'm just that kind of guy. But I am going to go with Mr. Juju Smith-Schuster as my bust of the week.
This makes 0 sense.
Okay, well, here's the sense. First of all, Pittsburgh going into New England. Yeah, not so great. Ben Roethlisberger 0-4 against Tom Brady in New England. He's just done nothing. You got Stephon Gilmore and Jason McCourty as one of the best cornerback tandems in the league. Last year, week 15, Juju had 4 for 40 in that matchup. He might get a little bit more than that, but man, I don't like him to have a big game at all. I'd be surprised if he maxes out, if he goes past 11 fantasy points, maybe 12. But that's not what you're expecting out of your number 1 pick wide receiver. You're not going to get this week. And again, defenses are ahead of offenses, as we saw last night. That's what we're going to see this weekend, too, in most of these games, and it's going to come out this week. Juju Smith-Schuster is my bust of the week. Etan, what do you say to that?
There's too much volume there for me to be convinced that Juju Smith-Schuster is anything less than a start in this game, just because this is going to be a game where you would expect both of these teams to put up a good amount of points. If that's the case, Pittsburgh is going to have to do a lot of that through the air. Now, I know that James Conner will play a factor. He'll play a role. But Dante Moncrief and James Washington behind Juju Smith-Schuster have me pegging Juju Smith-Schuster for 14 targets this game. It's going to be something ridiculous. I don't necessarily care if it's Stephon Gilmore. I don't care if it's Devin McCourty. If you're going to pepper a guy that much with targets, I just think that he is going to produce to some degree. Now, whether or not he goes off for 20 points, 25 points this week, yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that. I don't necessarily think that he gets there because Bill Belichick does have a reputation of going after and stopping your number one target. But I do think Juju is still going to get his in both this game and every game this year. A lot of what I do is dynasty focused, and so I'm always kind of looking at the long-term ramifications of what players can be and what players can do. And I really don't think it's going to be too long until we see Juju Smith-Schuster as the number one wide receiver in dynasty.
Number one. Well, a lot of people think that this year, too, for just this season. So we'll see. Look, he is in a great position, no doubt about it. But Ben's going to be gone soon. Is it going to be the same when Ben is gone? That's the big question when it comes to dynasty. Your thoughts, Andy?
Yeah, I was just simply thinking it didn't make any sense because it's lining up to be a James Washington game for everything you said against Juju. But this is just you trying to paint the lanes for your Dante Moncrief shares. I think Juju is going to get his, as was just previously said. I think this is the game Juju shows us that he is the real deal. I've been a doubter in the past. I've come around. I will not do that anymore. He was doubted, from his college days into the league, and I won't do that any longer. Juju, I am fully on board JJSS. And, I think this is a Juju game and a James Washington game. And this is where we see that Dante Moncrief is a decent veteran minimum kind of guy.
Okay, well, there you go. So, lots of things going on, but I want to get into what else did I want to talk about? Sorry, I got this. We talked a little bit about the Arizona offense, but I want to get into it more in depth real quick. And I'll start with you, Andy. What are you thinking we could see from David Johnson, and also what receivers on this team are you targeting going into week one, or are you thinking of, or are you just staying away?
No, I like them all. I told you guys last week, Keyshawn Johnson was a guy that I was really feeling good about. I still think he's going to be there. Fitzgerald is just tried and true. I would say something in the 50-yard on 4 or 5 catches range for him. I think we see the ball spread out. I don't think Kyler Murray's the type to focus on any one particular wide receiver or target. I think throughout the whole process, people just focus too much on his height and not how good his football IQ is. You had the issues come out about how he handled himself with the Dan Patrick thing in particular. Again, I think a lot was unfair to him. When you think about his sports IQ, when you factor in the baseball kind of stuff, his physical talent, this guy is a freak. And I think he's a lot better than people want to give him credit for. I'm not worried about this offense. The defense still sucks. It's going to be a situation where they're going to have to be throwing the ball. They're going to have to be figuring out a way to move the ball and be in shootouts with other teams if they want to have any type of success in the win-loss column. So as far as like one particular wide receiver, I like them all kind of evenly. That's the problem. There's not one of them that jumps out to me. I want to say Christian Kirk just because I liked him last year. I thought he was the best slot receiver in last year's class. I do think he's a dynamic player. He has some history with Kyler as well, going back to college. But I think they're all evenly balanced, and I think Murray's the kind of quarterback that will display that. So you're looking, anywhere from 3 to 5 catches for probably 4 to 6 guys, and anywhere from 50 to 80 yards for the same number. I think it's going to be a balanced attack.
How about you, Etan? What are you taking away from this? What do the numbers tell you, Etan? What do the numbers tell you?
I'll tell you what the numbers tell me. Arizona had 27.84 seconds per play last season. That was the 18th highest pace in the league last season. But when you look at game script neutral pace, which means when there were plus or minus 6 points, Arizona actually had the 11th highest pace last season. So a lot of people are kind of going crazy with the whole narrative that Cliff Kingsbury is going to come in and dramatically change the pace. Now, I do think that they will play faster and they will have more plays, but I don't think that it's going to be as easy to make that transition as we were expecting. And I don't think it's going to be as impactful when considering that they were in the top half and the top third in terms of pace just last season, in terms of game script neutral pace. We've already talked about the offensive lines. For me, it also seems like another issue with this team is there are too many slot receivers. There's too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to the slot. You have Christian Kirk, who can play on the outside, but he's also a capable slot receiver. Andy Isabella is a slot receiver. Keyshawn Johnson is a slot receiver. Larry Fitzgerald, at this point of his career, is a slot receiver. If you're going to tell me David Johnson's going to catch passes, he's going to catch passes from the slot. You can't have 16 people playing slot on the same team. So I just don't necessarily know how this offense functions. I do know that they're going to be dramatically different from what we've seen in the preseason because we haven't seen them really push that pace. But I just don't know what that is necessarily going to mean for this team. That can mean a lot of points. That can mean high scores. That can mean everything that you would want it to mean from a fantasy perspective. That can also mean a hell of a lot of turnovers and a hell of a lot of mistakes, a heck of a lot of penalties against this team as they try to figure out how to carry out what Cliff Kingsbury wants this team to be.
I think you're going to see a lot of schoolyard football with this offense in the sense that it's going to be helter-skelter, which is great for what Murray is as a quarterback. And I think a lot of that has to do with why they made the switch to go to Murray from Rosen, because Murray fits that pace and that style just dramatically better and different than Rosen.
Well, yeah, because he's actually accurate when he's on.
Very much so.
That's
not
what
just
it comes down to. No, it really does. I mean, Rosen can run. Rosen's got feet. He can definitely move around. I mean, he's not Kyler Murray moving, but he's he can move around well enough. But the fact of the matter is, Kyler Murray is just pinpoint accurate on the move, and there's not many quarterbacks in the league I say are better at it than he will be. I do like this kid. I think this kid is going to be special at some point. I'm just not sure if it's going to be this year.
There's not many players in the league that can do the things that he can do. We saw Aaron Rodgers going back to last night's game. There was one particular play. I forgot it was later in the game, but he was rolling out to his right, almost to the sideline, threw across his body like 40, 50 yards downfield. Maybe it was 30. It was deep. I want to say it was in the 40-yard range, but across his body, running to the sideline. That's something that he and maybe one other quarterback currently in the league can do, with the other one being Kyler Murray. We've seen Kyler Murray make those kinds of throws. So you're talking about just a unique advantage and a weapon. That's why I go back to that schoolyard football comment where, as Etan was saying, you have all these slot guys. You have all these guys that kind of duplicate each other. And that's why I don't know who's going to be the guy. They're all evenly balanced, which is why I think –
they're not. No.
Okay, then you go. What's your point with this?
Look, it's Fitzgerald is going to play most of the slot. Kirk definitely moved outside last year and did well with it. As long as he's healthy, he's going to do well. And the fact of the matter is, Isabella and those guys, they're not going to see a ton of playing time. Maybe when they go to 4 or 5 wides, they'll get a chance, and maybe they make one big play, something like that. But those guys aren't going to get much play. It's going to be Fitzgerald, it's going to be Kirk, and it's going to be Crabtree. That's why they brought Crabtree in, because they needed another vet receiver. I don't think they were comfortable with the rookies yet. I don't think they were picking up on this, what is going to be probably a crazy playbook to try and do this when you're moving guys around, shuffling guys around. That takes a little while for rookies to get into and figure out. Whereas you get a guy like Crabtree who's been around, he knows multiple different offenses, has experience. He's a fast guy. He's got good hands. He gives you everything you need as that third receiver. So I think it's going to focus on those 3 guys, and of course David Johnson. I love David Johnson this year, but that offensive line is going to be tough. Hopefully they get Gilbert back quickly. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Everybody, my ball in the chat room is saying defensive coordinators will catch on after a few seasons. Heck, they may catch on after a few games. I don't think that's going to matter if this offense is as good as they purport it to be. Again,
where does it take them, honestly? I mean, to me, this comes to an organizational, philosophical point. How good do we think we can be? Because now you're only altering your draft position at this point. I get it. I get the moral victories. Can we show improvement? Can we go week to week? This isn't a playoff team. This isn't an 8-win team. So we're talking about
they could win 8 games. I'm not going to say they can't. We've seen worse teams win 8 games.
No, but the only reason I say that is because you mentioned Crabtree having a role. I think Crabtree came in to have a role with the rookies as far as a locker room and a veteran presence, not somebody to take their time away or their snaps away. I think they want to see what this offense can be and develop. I say that, and then the other side of my brain, I'm thinking, well, they also brought Charles Clay in and they cut Caleb Wilson, and they let Ricky Seals-Jones go. So what the hell is going on? Because if you're trying to build a team and you're bringing in veterans, I don't know. But this is definitely, I think we would all agree, it's not a playoff team. So you're playing against yourself now at this point, where you could say, listen, we got this. We have this number one quarterback who we think is going to be our face of our franchise for the next decade. We can get the left tackle to protect him next year. We can get the running back, perhaps. I mean, I don't think you'd have to invest a 1-1 for that, but you went heavy on your receivers this year. My point being is you're playing against yourself at that point. So
I just think this is an issue where, maybe with a coach that's a little bit more established, that has a little bit of a longer leash, then maybe that's an option. But Cliff Kingsbury, I mean, this has to work out for Cliff Kingsbury. That's the whole reason why he made the trade from Josh Rosen to getting Kyler Murray in the first place. This has to work out. And if it doesn't work out, he's not going to get another opportunity, at least not in the head coach capacity. He might be an offensive coordinator here and there, but he's not going to get another chance to be in full control of a team. So if you're going to start all over again, which is essentially what the Arizona Cardinals have done this year, yes, I understand the worst place to be is too bad to actually compete, but too good to really get those high-end draft picks. But at the same time, you have to show your bosses upstairs that, hey, you're worth keeping around. So I think this is kind of what it comes down to here. And for that reason, I do see Arizona getting close to being either a 6 to 8 win team, something in that range. I do think that we will get value returned from drafting Kyler Murray, QB 13, QB 9, something in that range. I think he'll be there. But all the other skill positions for me, I throw my hands up in the air. I just don't necessarily know how that is going to work out, as you guys were saying before.
Do you have either of you, do you have one receiver that you feel like you have to have out of that offense?
Fitzgerald for me. But I feel that every year.
I want Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk had a good last year in bad circumstances. I do expect that snap count to go up for whatever that increase actually is. I think Christian Kirk is the beneficiary of that because he's going to be on the outside getting those deeper routes. So if there's one receiver I want is Christian Kirk, but if you're asking me whether I think Christian Kirk's going to be a wide receiver 2 locked in this year, I don't know. I really don't know, and I wish I did.
Hey, look, you got to make your best guess. That's what we all do. That's how this game works. We pick our battles and we fight them and we run with them and, try and get them up there. So I got to ask you guys, Julio Jones kind of made a little quip saying, he wasn't sure he was going to play this weekend, but then he went back and said, oh, yeah, I'm going to play. And, of course, we know he's trying to get a new contract. Where do you stand on Julio Jones? You think he should get a new contract? Didn't he just get one last year? Or was it the year before? My brain is fried at this point on a Friday night.
He had a contract restructure last year. So, yes, you absolutely remember correctly. And I actually have a funny comparison to throw out to you. Jarvis Landry is being paid 14 point something, nearly $15 million this year. Guess how much Julio Jones is being paid?
It's got to be less than that, just the way you framed the question.
It's about $13 million this year. So Julio Jones absolutely deserves a brand new contract. That
just means they did a lousy job last year.
Well, no, because they converted a lot of that money to bonus, so they just gave him the money without it necessarily kind of being on the deal.
So then he got more money than that dollar amount per year.
Exactly.
Okay, so see, that's the problem. and this is media today, and unfortunately we're part of that, but that's the problem that goes on. It's like, oh, he's getting less money than Jarvis Landry. Oh, let's just forget about the other $15 million he got guaranteed on the back end. Let's forget about that. His dollars per year is less than Jarvis Landry. How is that possible? Man, it's just crazy.
I mean, compared to your colleagues, APY is important. You want to have that average annual value near the top of the league if you're going to produce like a guy that is near the top league, season in, season out. Julio Jones plays through foot injuries. I mean,
I'm not putting the man down. The man's an outstanding receiver.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, he deserves every penny, and I don't think he's got what he deserves, at least in this current market of things. If you're going to pay a guy like Jarvis Landry $15 million a year, you should be doing the same thing for Julio.
Well, first of all, Julio Jones is my favorite wide receiver, one of my favorite players overall. One of the reasons I'm able to confidently say I'm a closet Bama boy. But all that being said,
that's not the only thing you're in the closet about, but let's not talk about that.
Anyway, you made me lose my train of thought here. All that being said, listen.
I win.
You are correct. You are correct about he should be paid more than what he is in comparison to other players. However, that's not on the Falcons for not offering. He's paid $97 million in his career. That's on the Browns. That's on Miami. That's on the Jarvis Landry handlers. Maybe Julio should get a new agent or get Jarvis's agent if that's the case. But that shouldn't be on the Falcons. And this is the problem I have with how the contracts are kind of run in this league, because it's not about who the best player is. And now you're going to get the players that are the best and think, well, I'm better than him. So if he got that and I'm playing through these, screws in my foot and everything like that. Right. Exactly. So it's going to become an endless perpetual cycle that I think, we could do without. But all that being said, yeah, Julio should be paid as a top 5 receiver he is. And he's 30 years old. I don't have an issue with him saying that, hey, I don't know how many paydays I have left. So, yeah, let's do this now. All that being said, there is a difference between playing in practice and there's a difference between playing in games. I think his mentality will be, if he suits up, treat it like a practice. I'm not diving for anything. I'm not taking any big hits over the middle. However, this is still a Sunday game. I don't know that you could turn that mindset off on a Sunday. So I think if he's out there, he's out there.
Well, my ball says down there in Atlanta, word is that he will get his contract before Sunday. And the only reason, this is really a thing is that they did promise to get his deal done by the end of camp earlier, and it hasn't gotten done. So I think that's what's really blowing this up. They said they would get it done, and they haven't. So it will be interesting to see if they do get it done by Sunday. Or you're right, Andy, maybe he doesn't go all out in this week's game. And, I hate when that happens. So, I hate that. Like you said, he made $98 million over his career. Go out there and play the freaking game, you idiot.
I don't necessarily know if Julio would be that guy to not give full effort in every game, because he kind of has throughout his entire career. But
and I agree. I'm not saying he is. He definitely is. I'm just saying we've seen enough of that. He's not Moss. We knew Moss took plenty of plays off.
Yeah, from that perspective.
I want to clarify one thing. I'm not saying he is that type. I'm saying there is definitely a difference between a practice game and a real game where you're going over the middle. Maybe you're not laying out for it. I don't know that he could shut that off, given that it would be Sunday, given that it would be week 1, given everything that's going into it. I don't know if he could shut that off. I'm not questioning Julio's character or anything at all like that. But there definitely is a difference between, I'm out here, I'll take my screens and run with it, and I can shuffle out of bounds, but I'm not going over the middle for that big hit. I'll run the route, but if I feel something coming, maybe I'll let this one go. Don't tell. I'm not saying it's Julio, but don't tell me that other players wouldn't have that feeling.
Oh no, we've seen plenty of players do that. Like I said, Randy Moss was known for that. If he knew the ball wasn't coming his way, he didn't care what he did. Way too often. So yeah, I get that. And like Etan said, Julio's never been known to be that kind of guy. When he gets on the field, he's played through injury plenty of times. He gets out there, he always puts out his all. Crazy. Okay, so guys, we're just about at the end here. So I'm going to throw one last thing at you that I didn't have on the show sheet, but I want to get it out anyway. Etan, I want you to give us a bold prediction for this season, not just for this week, but for this season. Something that's really out there.
A bold prediction for the season. I don't necessarily know if this is bold anymore. I've kind of been on this train for a long time. I was saying Tyler Lockett was the number one wide receiver in Seattle last year before all the Doug Baldwin nonsense. Tyler Lockett is going to finish the season as a wide receiver 1. Now, I don't think he'll be wide receiver 6 or anything like that, but, finishing at wide receiver 9 or so, I think is entirely within his range of outcomes. Last season on just 70 targets or so, he was a top 15, top 16 wide receiver in the NFL. Now there's essentially nobody around him. He has a rookie that's at the wide receiver 2 in DK Metcalf. I mean, I just don't necessarily see how he doesn't see 110, 120 targets. And yes, compared to the other top receivers in the game, that's not a huge amount. But compared to what he received last season, again, just around 70 targets, 110, 120 is almost double that. That's where we're at with kind of what his production can be, especially if they get him in the slot. If they get him in the slot, I think it's a different story entirely, because then he can actually start to work on routes that have a higher success rate than those that he would find on the outside, because you can't press up on him just as much as you could on the outside in the slot. So I really do think there's a situation where Russell Wilson just has to love you. Once Russell Wilson loves you, I mean, your day is made, your career is made. Just ask Doug Baldwin. It seems you don't have to be the most targeted receiver in the league. Russell Wilson is efficient enough to get you targets where you can make plays game in, game out, which is why Tyler Lockett had a perfect passer rating when targeted last season, which is why Tyler Lockett was one of the most efficient wide receivers we've seen in the league in a long time.
Wait, but I got to stop you right there. I got to ask you, don't you see that efficiency has to regress?
Yes.
It has to regress. So it really does come down to amount of targets increasing in a big way.
I compare this to the Tyreek Hill situation. Everybody was kind of scared about Tyreek Hill last season as well, because they were saying, okay, well, we've seen crazy efficiency. There's no way that he can hold this up. Well, not only did he kind of get pretty close to holding it up, he was able to go up to about 136 targets last year. And again, I'm saying we're going to see an increase from 70 targets to something in the 110, 120 target range. So that massive volume increase, I think, will be enough to offset any efficiency that we're worried about, and even provide more value for a guy like Tyler Lockett this season.
I couldn't agree more. I love Tyler Lockett. I've been spouting his name all preseason, going off on him. I love him this year. I think he's going to be a monster. Andy, any thoughts there or any bold predictions from you?
Well, Gregory Castillo agrees with you. He said that's the one take that you've given so far that he's bought into with Tyler Lockett. If you're talking about just gaining Russell Wilson's love, I think we should be talking more about Gary Jennings, but he hasn't really done much. They have some history together, I think, going back to like whatever it is, the PSAL league, not PSAL. PSAL is a New York City thing. PAL, Police Athletic. They got some history of going back together, where he was like a youth counselor to Gary Jennings. I don't know what it was, but I read it somewhere. I heard it somewhere. It's true. How bold do you want to get with this?
As bold as you want to go.
We looking for players? We looking for situations, storylines? What?
It's all yours. You can take it whatever you want.
All right. I mean, my storyline is Gronk comes back. Patriots win another Super Bowl, and that's it. Gronk comes back week 12-ish. So nothing to do fantasy related, but that's my NFL storyline. Fantasy related, I've been saying this for a while now. I still believe it. At the end of the year, everybody's going to look back and say, yeah, Josh Jacobs was the only rookie running back that mattered, that we should have cared about. He's going to be the only one with 1,000 yards with double-digit touchdowns.
No.
Yeah.
No.
This is my take, not yours.
I know, but you're wrong.
All right. No, it's facts. It's facts. 1,200 yards. 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 260 carries, 50 receptions with another 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's my off the cuff Friday night FF Champs After Dark spur of the moment projection for Josh Jacobs.
Well, there you go. I'd love to see it. I definitely own a few shares of Josh Jacobs. I'm okay with it, but I still think Montgomery's going to be there by season's end. I'm definitely a Montgomery believer. Again, I just think this kid is a freaking monster.
He's going to have some ground to make up after this.
He does, yeah, absolutely, no doubt. But there's going to be a few others.
I see some Fournette in the chat there, and I just have to say I 100% agree. I think Leonard Fournette is one of the most undervalued running backs in the entire National Football League this season. Leonard Fournette has nobody behind him. He has Divine Ozigbo backing him up. The Jaguars
don't be forgetting Raquel Armstead.
No, forget Raquel Armstead.
yeah. You already heard the Jaguars have him and D.D. Westbrook to throw the ball to, and I really do think that Leonard Fournette can see 50 catches this season. I do think he's going to be in there on all goal line work. And I mean, week 1, look at the matchup against the Chiefs. It's nothing better you could ask for. So Leonard Fournette is going way underdrafted. That would be, I guess, another one of my bold predictions. I think he can finish this year as a top 8, top 5 RB if everything goes right and he can stay healthy.
Listen, Temple should be my college program. I've said I'm a Miami fan because the closest thing we have to real football here is Rutgers, and Temple has actually been the most successful program within, shouting distance from New York City. So I should like Raquel Armstead more, but I don't. So,
well, he kind of went out the window when they picked up Divine. That definitely hurt his stock. Look, at Fournette, I don't think Fournette is particularly a great running back. He does it because he gets volume. He gets a lot of volume in that offense. I expect that to continue. And if he gives you even 12 games on the season, I'm right there with you. He's going to put up monster numbers, and it's, all in there. But, man, it's just hard for me to get behind him doing that. He's burned me the last couple of years. I'm going to sit on the sideline this year, and if he does it, good. For all the people that took him, good for you, but it wasn't me this year. I think I own him in 2 leagues, and those were actually 2 drafts I did on purpose where I drafted entire teams of guys I didn't draft anywhere else.
Can I just ask you a quick question? You said he's burned you for a few years. You said he's burned you for a few years. He's only been in the league 2 years.
I said 2 years. I didn't say few. I said 2 years.
All right.
If I said few, wow, really?
He was good in the first year. My question would be, how do you feel about Dalvin Cook?
I love Dalvin Cook, but I'm afraid of him this year too.
And
this is what I've been saying all season. Those running backs in that second round range and early third round, every single one of them has major question marks. Before LaShawn McCoy went, we saw, Damian Williams in there. Whether or not he could stand up to 16 games, we didn't know. Now we have McCoy to deal with. All of those guys, Fournette, Cook, every single guy in that range, Gurley now in that range, every single one of them have major question marks. So I started calling that round the quicksand of fantasy football running backs was in round 2. You had to pick your poison or stay away from that entire round because every single running back in that round has major question marks for this season.
Listen,
every single one.
Here's one more hot take, and I hope the guy I told to drop Darwin Thompson earlier today isn't watching or listening. But I think LaShawn McCoy is the Michael Crabtree of running backs in the sense that he was brought to KC just to reunite with Reed and listen, you can't go wrong with adding a guy like Shady McCoy, but I don't think he's got a prominent role, and it's still Darwin Thompson's role. And this was overreaction to them bringing LaShawn McCoy in. That's another bold take, but again, I told someone to drop Darwin today.
Let's face it. I agree with you. McCoy hasn't looked like much the last couple of years. I get that. But the problem I have with it is, when I think, he's done, he's toast, he can't do anything again. All I have to do is go back and look at last year and look at what Peterson did. To me, that he came off the year before averaging 2.2 yards per carry, looked like trash, goes to Washington in a terrible offense, everything around him broken down. Hear me out. 4th string quarterback, all the wide receivers hurt, the offensive line in shambles from injury, and the man goes out and puts up 1,000 yards last year. So you're telling me, you're telling me that LaShawn McCoy in this great offense with a coach that knows him, he can't be reinvigorated and come back and have a solid season? That's not even a possibility. That's not even in his range of outcomes.
No, because Adrian
No, that's
Peterson.
lazy. That's lazy analysis.
I'm going to tell you why it's not lazy. You're not even letting me talk. Adrian Peterson is superhuman. Are you kidding me? Have you seen what this guy has done? He defies logic. Adrian Peterson is not normal. He's the closest thing to the Terminator that we've seen. It's insane what Adrian Peterson can do from a physical standpoint. That is not LaShawn McCoy. So if you want to say, is it his range of outcomes to be productive and have a role in the league and cut into somebody's touches? Sure, absolutely. To come in and be 1,000-yard rusher and do what Adrian Peterson did last? No, he's not. I'm sorry.
I'm 100% in agreement with Andy here. I feel like
Again,
we're gonna see.
Look, see, this is what I get wrong, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm not saying it's absolutely going to happen, but to say it can happen, to me, that's just lazy analysis. I'm sorry, it just is.
I do think that it can. I do think that it can. I don't think that he's going to take over that role from Damian Williams. We've heard a lot of pretty much all the news out of Kansas City this year has been that Damian Williams is their RB1. But if you actually just look at LaShawn McCoy compared to the guys in LaShawn McCoy's backfield for the last couple of seasons, I write for Number Fire, and so I have access to their net expected points data. If you look at their net expected points, all running backs in the it's a long explanation. I can get into it, but it's an indicator. If you look at their net expected points, all running backs in the Buffalo Bills offense. So a lot of what people are saying about LaShawn McCoy is he was in a horrible situation, all the rest of it. I get it. Compared to the backs in his offense, he had the lowest net expected points rating of the last 2 seasons, lower than Chris Ivory.
He was playing for a last place team or
lower than Chris Ivory, lower than Marcus Murphy. This guy was not a good running back.
I didn't care.
What was Adrian Peterson on last year?
Adrian Peterson was all about Adrian Peterson trying to prove he's still Adrian Peterson. I get that. But look, wait. If you're LaShawn McCoy,
you're playing in Buffalo. Trying to prove he's still LaShawn McCoy.
No, but if you're LaShawn McCoy, you're playing in Buffalo. Look, your team's not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere with this team. And why are you going to go out there and really kill yourself? All of a sudden now he's on a Super Bowl caliber team. He has a chance to play on a Super Bowl team.
This is kind of completely off topic, but whatever happened with his legal issues?
I haven't
heard anything in forever.
It never happened. Apparently it was all a hoax at least that's what we're meant to believe, that it was all a hoax by his girlfriend.
Okay.
I love this thing. Thanks, Greg, for making me laugh.
Hey, man, I can get into it. I can definitely get into it here. We can talk about AB and air yards all day and why he's not a good match for Derek Carr, but I do think that Jim would turn me off here.
I laugh about these things because, but really goes back to when Mike Clay first invented ADOT. Mike Clay is a good friend of mine. We go way back. Actually, his first podcast ever was on mine. So we go back a long way. And we know each other well. And when he first came out with ADOT, I used to bust his chops forever because, look, it's a nice stat and it's great for NFL, but tell me how it helps us in fantasy. And that was the one thing he didn't know. He couldn't set that down and say, this is why this helps fantasy at the time. Now, there's been a lot of people since then that have gone on to figure out ways how you can use this as, fodder for going into the next season and decide who is going to be a better pick here or there, whatever. But, it's when it gets to these kind of stats, I mean, you can cherry pick whatever you want. You can go with that, whatever you want. You can make stats say whatever you want by picking whatever stat you want to use. So, I'm not a big stats guy just for that reason. I've been on both sides of that border and just not a big thing. Everybody, and it's funny because all of the, and I'm going to say, whether you're millennials or not, all the young guys that have come into the field with all these new podcasts, throwing out all these numbers. Oh, he was a late breakout date. No, this. I was like, who cares? I don't care if he didn't break out till he was freaking 24. What do I care if he's breaking out now? I don't care what age. Just it gets a little too crazy for me is all I'm trying to say.
Would have saved you from Hakeem Butler. I would have said that much. Breakout age would have saved you from Hakeem Butler.
I wasn't on Akeem Butler, so you didn't have to save me ever.
There you go.
Can I say, though, you mentioned AB not being a good fit with Derek Carr. It's starting to look like, is any wide receiver a good fit with Derek Carr?
Jared Cook was.
I think Darren Waller will be a good fit with
yeah, I like Darren Waller, too. He's finally healthy and off the drugs, he should be good.
It's funny that you mentioned A-Dot. The reason that I think AB and Derek Carr are going to struggle to kind of work well together is because of that A-Dot.
Right.
Derek Carr has had one of the lowest A-Dots of all quarterbacks throughout his entire career. He just doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't like doing it. And AB has had one of the highest A-Dots over the last couple of seasons. So, I mean, you're trying to get a quarterback to essentially fit a round peg into a square hole, trying to get both of these guys to kind of be on the same page. And I really do think that, week 3, week 4, week 5, after the Raiders are not necessarily as interested in getting AB his touches as they are in winning the game. When AB sees like 6 touches in week 4, week 5, I want to see the whole next meltdown all over again. I think it's coming.
Yeah, I've stayed away from AB this year. I just, like you said, Carr just doesn't like to go down the field. And look, this is what happened to Cooper. We saw Cooper come alive going to Dallas because at least Dak will throw the ball down to him and let it go up and get it. Derek Carr was just never comfortable in doing that. And it's going to be the same thing with AB. And while he may get 180 targets, you have to wonder how efficient he's going to be with that. And you have to figure that the touchdowns are going to come way back with Carr. So I haven't really been on him all year. So, we'll see what happens.
And that's assuming he plays 16.
And that's assuming. So we got one question in the chat room we're going to take before we get off of this thing. Jason's been waiting patiently. And where'd it go? There it goes. Jason N wants to know, if you have Dalvin Cook, would you pick up Alexander Madison from waiver wire or someone like Jalen Samuels and Darwin Thompson? Etan, you're the guest. Who would you like out of these 3?
One of my current bosses, JJ Zacharyson at Number Fire, is constantly tasked with pretty much kind of beating back the idea that you should handcuff running backs by just saying that you should be looking for guys who could emerge in different scenarios. So instead of an Alexander Madison, I'd be looking at a Chase Edmonds. I'd be looking at somebody who can get a full role if an injury goes down. Because if you have both Alexander Madison and Dalvin Cook, I think essentially one of those guys is not useful throughout the season. Whereas if you have a guy like Chase Edmonds and something terrible happens to David Johnson, yes, that is probably going to be a tough situation to gain points because we talked about the offensive lines, but I do think that that's going to be more valuable than having a guy like Alexander Madison, who is only going to have any value in the event that one of your players goes down.
I can tell by Andy's face that he's just dying to get something out. Go ahead, Andy.
That just made no sense to me because I get what you're trying to imply, but you basically gave the same reason to have Chase Edmonds that you should have to want Alexander Madison or any handcuff for that matter.
But no, because if you only rate for that handcuff to have value is for your own player to go down. Essentially, only one of those guys is valuable the entire year. In the event that you have Dalvin Cook and then Chase Edmonds, Dalvin Cook can be playing, and then Chase Edmonds can have value all his own if an injury happens to David Johnson. So
you're saying if you have David Johnson, you should go after Alexander Madison.
Exactly. You have 2 shots to win is essentially what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying, but you're basically just guessing who's going to get hurt, who's going to get injured, and who's going to save me.
No, I'm just not wasting a roster spot. That's my point.
Okay, but here, I'm going to throw the wrench in this. Alexander Madison is going to have his own fantasy value outside of Dalvin Cook. They're going to run enough where he's going to get his chances. Not only that, they've already said that he's going to get a lot of the goal line work. So he's going to get those chances at touchdowns, which I think could actually net him quite a few. So if he gets that plus any work out of the backfield when they, sit Cook for a little bit, give him a little break, whatever you want to call it, he's going to have his own value. Chase Edmonds isn't going to have value unless Dave Johnson goes down.
I think Mike Boone can steal some touches. I think there are other things that can happen in that backfield. I think looking at a guy, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Chase Edmonds. He's just the example that I used. But looking at a guy that can have serious value in the event that the starter goes down, instead of rostering 2 guys on the same team.
Here's the other flaw in your plan. David Johnson lost a whole year, right? But that was a freak wrist injury. Dalvin Cook has lost major parts of his 2 seasons in the league to soft tissue injuries, something that we know continue to come back and come back and come back. So to me, Madison is the better guy, whether you're handcuffing him or not, because I do think he's going to have a role of his own, first of all. But second of all, you're talking about a running back that has the history of getting injured year in, year out.
Get Divine Azigbo if you want to play that game.
Well, I do. I have him in a couple of things for things like that. But, if you take Cook, I want to have Madison because this is going to be a good running offense. And like I said, even if Madison has just a slight role, I think it could be good enough with the red zone to carry him as a flex buy filler type of guy. I'm not saying he's going to be an RB2 or anything like that, but he's going to have some kind of role, I believe, in this offense because they're not going to run Dalvin Cook to death based on his injury history. They're just not. They're not going to give him 250 plus carries. I don't see it. I think he could be very efficient with less carries. I think he's that good a running back. So you don't have to give him that many. You give him 200, you give Madison the other 100, 120, he'll do fine with that. If he gets the goal line work on top of it, I think he puts up points.
Starting David Montgomery in week 1 was also assuming rational coaching. I'll just throw that out.
Well, that's the one thing that I always come back to. Rational coaching could kick you in the ass in fantasy. Because we expect rational coaching. We just don't always get it.
So let me ask you guys this, just to answer some of the guys in the chat. So Greg Castillo, I actually just dropped N'Keal Harry for Miles Boykin on my fishbowl team in the SFB 9. So there's your Miles Boykin love. And to Jason, I'm going to ask this to our esteemed guest and my co-host over there. A week ago, you could not have gotten Tony Pollard, Darwin Thompson, Justice Hill, or Madison if you want to throw him into the mix. A week later, today, you can get all 4 of them, basically, for pennies on the dollar. So, of those guys, which would you want?
Madison.
I want
think
Justice
he's going to have a role.
Okay. I want Justice Hill. I don't necessarily.
I like Justice Hill too. I definitely have quite a few Justice Hill.
Yeah, I think that Justice Hill kind of has his own role from week 1.
Yeah, I think he fits that offense better than Mark Ingram's going to fit that offense. Mark Ingram's never run an RPO offense in his life. It's going to be interesting to see if he can play that. But I think Justice Hill definitely gets his role in that as well. Yeah, I think all of them, Devin Singletary, you could throw in the same mix. Everybody's freaking out because the unofficial first depth chart comes out and he's third behind both TJ Yeldon and Gore, and everybody on Twitter today, oh man, look at this Singletary. He's third on the depth chart. Oh, we invested heavily in him. I saw guys drafting him at the beginning of the 5th round a couple of days ago. Are you kidding me, people? Slow to freaking roll down. I like Singletary. I definitely think he's going to have a major part of this offense going forward, but it's not going to be heavy and it's not going to be right out of the gate when they got a guy like Frank Gore that they know what they get out of him. He's not spectacular, but he'll do what they need.
Another bold take for you. Frank Gore is better than LaShawn McCoy.
Well, hey, he's been doing it longer. No doubt about it. He's been doing it longer.
I would put more on Frank Gore being a 1,000-yard rusher than LaShawn McCoy this season.
Well, there you go. Look, I'm not saying McCoy is going to do it. I'm not saying that. I keep trying to explain that to people. I'm just saying if you don't think that's in the range of possibility, the range of outcomes for LaShawn McCoy, then you're just wrong. It is absolutely in that range. If I'm LaShawn McCoy and I'm going to a team that has a chance to be a Super Bowl team, man, that's going to reinvigorate me and get me wanting to play again. Coming from a last place team to that, I would want to play better and play more. So I'm going to say that. I got my bold take. I'm going to get in, and this is not really for fantasy, but it is about the Buffalo Bills. And that's the Buffalo Bills are absolutely going to be a playoff team this year in the AFC, going to get in as a wild card, and they're actually going to win their first playoff game this year. They're going to win that playoff game. I believe that wholeheartedly. First of all, this defense is going to be masked just crazy. They're going to be one of the best defenses in the league. And Josh Allen, if he can ever learn to throw accurately, he's going to be deadly, but he can be deadly with his feet as well. So I think this team they're going to beat the Jets on the season. I know you want to jump in there.
Wrong.
Yeah, they're going to have a better record than the Jets this year, and I think they're going to make the playoffs and win their first playoff game.
No.
Just going back to LaShawn McCoy versus Gore. I mean,
we're going back.
Aside from the emotional aspect to that, running back production is largely a function of what that team is able to accomplish on offense. So just seeing it from that perspective, yes, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have a lot more red zone opportunities. They're going to have a lot more time on the ball than the Buffalo Bills will. For that reason, it's easy to see LaShawn McCoy coming out better than Frank Gore. But in terms of who's actually the better player right now, it's a toss-up. It's definitely a toss-up. And that tells you a lot about what you should be thinking about when it comes to LaShawn McCoy, at least if you factor in what he's done these last couple of seasons.
Well, here's one. Scott Engel or Corey Parson. It was Scott Engel's birthday this week, so happy birthday to the King.
Yes,
we'll give him the nod for that. It's his birthday week.
Hey, I like Scott. I got to work with him every Sunday night last year. It was always a trip. I've known Scott online for many years, but back in 2011, we did a fantasy football festival down in Atlantic City, and it was the first time I got to meet him. We did a live draft for Sirius Radio and got to sit right next to him. And this was my introduction to Scott Engel that way. Every single time somebody in that draft or around that draft said the word ball, he would lean towards me and go, he said ball. He's every single time he did it. And I'd be like, Scott, shut up. We're on the radio. Shut up. he said ball. He's every single time. And I'll never forget it. I was dying. It was making me crazy. I miss working with both of those guys, to put it bluntly. I like working with Scott. Definitely like working with Corey. We had a lot of fun on the Frenzy last year. I miss him this year. But, it is what it is. Life goes on. You got to keep going.
You guys are crazy. I've just seen Jason agrees with you on McCoy.
I'm just saying, hey, it's in the range of possibility. That's all I'm saying.
It's a better system. It's a better
a couple of my last drafts, I picked him up as what the heck. I picked him up. He was probably my RB4. If it doesn't work out, who cares? But if it works out, hey, great. But I still have 3 drafts on Saturday, so we'll be interested to see how that plays out. And the thing I love about these drafts on Saturday is, although this year it's not really going to work too well, but normally on the Saturday draft after the Thursday night game, you can actually decide right up until the start of Sunday games whether or not to play the guys that played on Thursday night if you draft them. So after the fact, let's say one of them goes out and goes off for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, you can draft them on the Saturday
so
and then put them in on Sunday.
You're starting Allen Robinson? Is that
what I might. Hey, look, I liked Allen Robinson before the injuries took hold. Back in the early days of Jacksonville, I always liked the guy. And I'll tell you what, he looked good last night. He looked spry again. He looked like he was running without any pain. I'm sorry?
He looked healthy, yeah.
He had another catch when Trayvon Williams shoved him out of bounds. That if you look, he was getting both feet down on that too. That was very impressive.
I like what I saw out of it. Definitely made me feel better about him because I wasn't sure. We hadn't seen him in a couple of years, so I'm glad to see that for him, if nothing else. I don't have a lot of shares of him this year. After my 3 drafts on Saturday, I will have finished the season with 146 teams. Most of them are best ball. So, most of them are best ball, but there's 26 full season leagues that I have to run. So it's going to be a fun season. I'm looking forward to that. Guys, I want to thank you. We definitely went longer than I wanted to. This is going to be a bitch to edit tomorrow morning, but it is what it is. Etan, I want to thank you wholeheartedly for coming to join us. Tell everybody where they can find you, all that good stuff you got going on. Let them know about it.
Again, super, super grateful to be a part of the show. You guys are legends. You can find
in my own mind.
You can find all my work at Numberfire. You can find and listen to my podcast, Dynasty Diagnostic. It comes out every week. That is on the Dynasty Trade Calculator feed. So if you're already subscribed to that, you can hear us there. You can also follow me on Twitter at Etan Mozia. It's right now in the video. Go ahead, give me a follow. I will interact with you. I will probably tell you that that your favorite team is going to cut your favorite player. I'm really into contracts and all that stuff, but please go ahead and ask me questions if you have them, and kind of let me know how I can help. That's what I'm here for.
Excellent. Andy, tell everybody where they can find you and tell them about that great website you go flowing out with all kinds of articles every day.
Yeah. The
You
best,
sound so excited.
the best place. No, I got this one up my butt, so she's gonna tell you
Oh.
also. The website is Expand the Box Score. The easiest place to find me is, of course, on Twitter at People's Pen with the Z. It was up there
Bless you.
earlier tonight. Was that me?
To the dog.
Oh, bless you. That was her.
Yeah.
I got headphones on. I can't hear. Yeah, just find me on Twitter. That's the easiest way. Expandtheboxscore.com. NCAA football database, NCAA DFS, NFL database, NFL DFS. We got all kinds of things going on, including articles. My weekly rankings are up there. 25th in draft rankings last year, 23rd in season. On Fantasy Pros, I'm pushing for a top 10 finish this year. So my week one rankings are up on the site. Podcasts, articles, you name it. The rush rating from Helm Camp, as I mentioned earlier. I'm doing my own podcast on there. I had Connor Rogers on last week as my guest. A whole bunch of stuff.
He hasn't asked me yet.
Well, no, we do this every week, so I got to get around to it. But no, just a ton of stuff. So yeah, just find me on Twitter. That's the easiest way.
Okay, folks, and of course, I am Jim Day. You've been listening to Fantasy Football Champs After Dark. Find me on Twitter at FantasyTaz. I'm pretty much there 24/7 these days. Right now on the FNTSY Sports Network and the Sports Grid Television Network, the Fantasy Football Frenzy is on live every day on TV on Exumo TV, channel 719. It's actually pretty neat setup the way they have it set up on the show, so it's pretty nice. And every Monday through Friday at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, you can find us there, Chris Ventra, George Kurtz, and I, and we have a lot of fun with that. Of course, we have this podcast. I have the Wednesday night podcast with Mike Blewett and Tony Sincata, the WTF Fantasy Football Show. And now, starting this Sunday, I will be co-hosting with Joe P. Sapia on the Roto Experts in the Morning show every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, again on that same Zumo TV, channel 719. I'm looking forward to working with Joe. I've talked with him on a couple of pods, but I've never worked with him every week, and definitely looking forward to that. That's another very knowledgeable guy, so I'm looking forward to that. I want to thank everybody in the chat room and everybody who's listening to this pod. Please help us out. We're trying to get our name out there. Like us, leave a comment, subscribe. If you're on iTunes, definitely, give us a rating, give us comments, whatever you can do to help us grow this, get us our names out there. Get this pod growing. That's what we want to see. We want to get this chat room so that there's 100 people in there and we can answer your questions all show long. I don't care. I love to do that. So thank you all for coming out tonight. We will see you next week. Enjoy football Sunday. Hopefully it's better than Thursday. We will see you next week. Have a good night, everybody.
Thursday was good, by the way.
No, it doesn't. It was terrible. It was terrible, I tell you.